There's a lot of talk at the moment, I don't know if you've noticed it, about a shift, a change, a sort of an ascension, if you like, or a transition. Perhaps if you're religious, you've been talking about the book of Revelation. It does seem to me that there is something about to happen in this world, something for the good of us. And I know a lot of people have been talking about the 3D world and moving up to the 5D world. I don't know what happened to the 4D world. Somehow we jumped a phase, or we're going to jump a phase. Now, I completely confess, I am not 100% sure what all of this means. But you can't help noticing, maybe you haven't. Maybe this is not on your radar. Maybe this is the first time you've ever seen one of my videos and you think, what is this bald bloke talking about? It sounds a load of old nonsense. And what does he mean by 3D? Is that dimension? The three dimension of the dimension of going along this way, a dimension of going along that way, and a dimension of going on that way. Perhaps the fourth dimension is time, and we're going to the fifth dimension, which is, well, who knows what. But the thing about it does seem to be in the ether, if I can use that term, the ether. It does seem that we are moving to something. Now, I know that I've been mentioning in the past a number of terrible things that have been coming along at us. For instance, I mean, the most obvious is that the government, our kind and benevolent government that is there as our servants, have seemed to completely ignore that they are there as our servants and are supposed to be getting on top of numerous things that are in the way of us having an abundant and happy life. After all, why else would we be on this world? The other thing is humans are the only ones, it seems to me, that actually pay to be alive. You know, if you can't pay your way in this world, you've had it. Animals and birds and fish and whales, other mammals, don't pay to be alive. They don't pay to have a nest somewhere. They just get on with it. And yet somehow we've fallen into this very weird situation in which everything we do now has a monetary value. We're expected to pay for it. And the monetary part of it comes as us having to earn that money to pay for all these things. Otherwise, you can't have it hard cheese and nobody cares or bats an eye. You can walk along the streets of certain cities and towns and see people who have no money or nowhere to go, or other roads. You can see these people have very little and then move to another street, and these other people have a huge amount, and yet never the twain really meet. And no one seems to be helping each other, apart from certain bodies like charities that are set up to help one another. This is a strange situation, don't you think, that we've got ourselves in what we class as a civilized, sophisticated way of living for humanity? We've got all the special technology, and yet we seem to have no humanity. And I think now we are reaching a point where humanity is deciding once and for all that these dead corporations that have been rising up, charging us a lot of money, including authority figures like the Prime Minister and the government office, which are also dead corporations, they've had their time. It is now time for us to plan the new world, this new transition. Where are we going? What are we going to do? There is so much stuff out there about different ways to heal yourself. The fact that all this, I suppose you might say, occulted knowledge, hidden knowledge, knowledge that is poo-pooed in the mainstream media, and yet people like me and many, many others who are far more qualified than I am have been talking about this in the sidelines, in the shadows, in the, psst, come over here, I'll tell you a secret, something that you will not hear in the national newspapers or on television. Ways to heal yourself, to create a better future for yourself. There are, of course, an abundant load of these self-help books which have been talking about that, about manifestation, about how your thoughts are very important. Control your thoughts, keep them pure as much as you can, help one another, be of service. All this sort of stuff is very important. And in the new world, it's going to be more of that, I think. I think we are going to be less about finding a way to get money from one another. Who knows? We may have a completely moneyless manifesto in which we just help one another. It will take a bit of time. I don't know the answers, so don't look at me as if to say, hey, Richard, do you know actually what you're talking about? But I feel it. People are telling me on the emails where I look online, I see videos about this. I might bump into somebody in the street and just have a general conversation. In fact, those days of the hardships, the lockdowns, the scaremongering, the frightening stuff, the nasty bills, I think they're coming to a head. I think we're coming to a point where all of that is going to go. We may have some nasty time ahead. I'm not saying that by any means that it's going to be rosy, and I do think it's going to be rather bumpy. But as we approach this better time, which could happen any time now, we need to start thinking about what is the world that we want? What is the world? How do we, the sovereign people of this world, how do we want to live? Not how are they telling us how we've got to live and what laws we have to obey, and all of that legislation, acts and statutes, which is all about collecting money for the others. How do we actually want to live? Do we want to live in a loving, carefree, abundant world where we no longer have to pay big fines and things like council tax, which isn't actually going to the land that we want to improve? Do we want to work collectively together again? Do we want to be able to speak to our neighbour and know that our neighbour shares the same customs and traditions that we do, the same experiences, that we can laugh and enjoy life again instead of being fearful? Do we want to eat proper, real, genuine food that's come out of the ground and not a laboratory? Do we want to treat our animals with huge amounts of respect, even though some of them we may wish to eat ultimately, but we give their lives, that they are all the time they're on this earth, as much pride and kindness as we can, and we treat them with as huge respect, and we thank them for the sacrifice they will make for us if we decide that we need to eat them, for that is one way that we get a lot of nutrients. Will we think about our neighbours and our loved ones and our children and teach them in a far, far more loving way? Teach them positive things rather than negative things, the way the state is training and grooming our children to be good slaves, and in fact teaching them some rather nefarious activities on the sexual side. Children who do not need to know this. And also, surely parents are the best people to be teaching our children and our friends and our communities. Have schools themselves actually come to a point where they're no longer required? Do we need to work great long hours from 9 to 5 with 2-hour commutes to get to the places? Do we need to slavishly make these big barons very rich and actually ourselves not have as much? Should we not be out there with one another, laughing, helping, growing, creating, teaching our children and our friends, and sharing in wonderful experiences? Shouldn't we be learning new things ourselves, trying out more fun games and events, instead of being worried and downbeat? There is this amazing biosphere that we live on that I feel, wants us to have fun and enjoy ourselves in a very respectful way and not tear out all its raw substances and materials and burn them and waste them and then bury them again and then start polluting the place. I don't believe in this myth of man-made global warming, but I do believe that we are ransacking the wonderful things in this earth and that we are causing a lot of damage with pollution and other things. I think that there are energies that we can tap. I've been reading about the dangers of this electrical world that we're in, as we are electrical creatures ourselves, and that we are finely tuned, and some of the circuitry that we have in our houses, the Wi-Fi that we use, the overhead cables, the advent of more intensive generation of radioactivity, the radar, the satellites, may not actually be as good and as beneficial as we may think. But that's not to say that we've got to go back to the Ark and live in caves and things like that. I think there are energies, again, occulted information that we can tap, which are actually in frequency with us, that our mind is very much part of the solution, our thoughts. Quantum theory now, technologies are looking around and what we see is a hologram, is a creation. Things aren't as real as we think they are. There are ways that we can live in a much more relaxed and happy and sharing and kind world that's been hidden from us. But those people who've done that hiding, their time is up. It's all going to change. I keep hearing it, I keep feeling it, I sense it, even from the very food that I'm preparing for my meal. So chin up, everyone. Something is happening. Yes, it's going to be rough for a while. And yes, there will be those that doubt it and may be left behind. But we're all light beings having an amazing earth existence. And that is going to see us through to a far, far better time. Enjoy the journey.